All right, some political reaction or analysis for you now. Let's bring in Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast, who joins us via our video link for his take on this. Dr. Breakfast, great to have you on the program. Thanks very much indeed for making time to speak to us. And of course, as expected, there's been an avalanche of reaction since the president made his announcement late last night. Some people worried that the likes of Angie Motshekga and Blade Nzimande are back, but also encouraged by Ronald Lamola, for example, taking up international relations. Let me begin by just gauging where you reckon the hits and the misses are.
Well, I think there are strong points and weaknesses with regard to the team that has been assembled by the president. I think most people get the sense that by and large, or on the whole, most of the ministers were appointed on merit, even though part of me thinks that the executive institution is being used as a platform to dish out political favors in exchange for political support so that the ANC-led coalition arrangement can hold on to power a bit longer. Because the paradox is that some political parties have been arguing against expansionary fiscal, because when you look at this cabinet, you can see what kind of a budget we are going to, you can see what kind of a fiscal policy we are going to have. It goes without saying, it will be an expansionary fiscal policy. And then it begs the question as to what happened to that point that the DA was raising, that we need to address the issue of budget deficit. So those are some of the contradictions. But I mean, I think it's a golden opportunity now for all of them to share power, to work side by side and get the job done, put the country on the map. But of course, I think there will be challenges, because one of the long-standing arguments or debates is, where does policy come from? Where does policy come from? Does it come from political parties? Does it come from bureaucracy? Because each and every political party normally holds, conferences where it adopts policies. So what do? Do you cut and paste those policies? So I think those are some of the challenges that they might encounter, because now the ANC doesn't have an absolute majority where it can do as it pleases. The DA also, sometimes when they speak, they come across as if they have their own agenda, that they are going to come into power or into those positions and then implement their own policies. We need to bear in mind that in this country, we have a parliamentary system that embraces the conception of collective responsibility amongst members of the executive.
Yeah, and that collective responsibility is going to be interesting to see to what extent that actually comes about, given just how many different voices and potentially different perspectives there are. I just want to go through the list. In energy and electricity, for example, we've got Ramaphosa and Samantha Graham, two different political parties. Finance, we've got Enoch Godongwana, David Masondo, as well as Asho Soropan from the DA. Two different political parties. Trade and industry, Park Stau, yes, Zuko Koshimpi is there, but also Andrew Whitfield. So just those three key economic cluster positions are not wholly controlled by the ANC. And there's going to be a lot of questions, perhaps even concerns about whether or not it was wise to do this, whether I suppose the president had a choice, and if it's in the interest of the country to have something like this arrangement.
Well, we must bear in mind that this arrangement is a byproduct of negotiations which have been very protracted because the DA, it's open secret, they nearly walked out of this political arrangement. So then the ANC had to strike a balance in terms of satisfying the DA in the main and also other players which are in the mix.
Sure. There's also, I suppose, a lot of interest around young people who are part of this particular cabinet, right? Perhaps a sense that we're finally getting an idea of ushering in new voices, new blood. Ronald Lamola takes up international relations. I know he's not considered young, but relatively speaking. But Sivyo Kwahube in Home Affairs, for example, is there. Soli Malat in Communications is there as a young people. Amongst the deputies, Mkhuleko Hlengwa is the Deputy of Transport. Zuko Kodlimpi as well. Nuneba Mhlauli the deputy of the minister in the presidency. Does this go far enough? Does this also, I suppose, give you a new sense of optimism about this long kind of promised idea of having young people in places that matter, making important decisions?
Well, I think at a strategic level, in any workplace, and I'm not saying that politicians are employed like, ordinary workers where, you enter into a labor relations agreement, because theirs is that of a deployment. But at the same time, I think if you want to transfer skills, you need both young people and old people working side by side. By so doing, you're able to transfer skills. I mean, a person like Ronald Lamuna has been given a very powerful position, the position of IR or foreign affairs. And I think he stood out in his previous ministerial post as a head of correctional services. I mean, he's the one who was leading the deliberations at the ICJ. So I think no wonder he was given this respect. But also there are other young people, as you indicated, like Siviwe Kwahuba of DA. She's also leading a very important post, which is that of basic education. As you know, that we have an unequal education due to our history. It's going to be interesting how that one is going to play itself out, given the fact that the DA has an ideological position towards trade unions. And you know that, the trade unions which are aligned to the ANC have a strong footprint in that terrain. So it's going to be interesting how the DA is going to respond to those issues. I mean, people have been arguing that one of the reasons why every now and then workers are downing tools in the educational sector is because the ANC has allowed the unions, whether that is right or wrong, to do as they please. So the question is, what is going to be the attitude of the minister of the DA towards the trade unions? Are we going to see a lot of strikes, or is she going to crack the whip? But yeah, I mean, it's going to be. But also, you have another minister who's leading the Ministry of Communication from the DA as well.
Yeah, that's right. And I'll also try to remember who that is. It's Soli Malatsi, that's right, who's deputized, yes, ironically, by Mondli Kungubele, who used to lead that ministry. Which leads me to my next question. I wonder to what extent you reckon the president has successfully managed to tame the wild waters in his own political corner, right? I have no doubt he's had to have very difficult conversations with people who were hoping to come back to cabinet or were hoping to retain their positions in cabinet, and had to make way for sometimes younger politicians from other organizations. Mondli Kungubele, for example, comes to mind. He headed up communications. He's now deputy in that position and had to make way for the likes of Soli Malatsi. Do you reckon, if there's any kind of political tension for the president insofar as that is concerned, that he's been able to sort that out?
I think in the bigger scheme of things, this coalition arrangement is a brainchild of the market forces. Why do I say that? Because captains of industry, before the announcement was made by the ANC, were already contributing to the discourse that they prefer an arrangement between the ANC and the DA. That's why even the market forces, after the announcement was made of the new team that the president has assembled, they did not react negatively because they are content with the way things are. So there was a strong hand of the market forces. I also think that some positions the ANC has let go of them, but not completely. They have put their own people as deputies to make sure that they maybe create a system of checks and balance so that other leaders of political parties don't do as they please. But it's going to be very difficult for the ANC now to run this government because it doesn't have absolute majority. So, I mean, decisions will have to be taken based on collectivism as opposed to orders from Luthuli House.
Yeah. Shall we speak about the security cluster briefly? Police is still firmly under the control of the ANC. Senzo Mkhunu heads up that position. Thembi Nkadimeng heads up Justice and Constitutional Development, deputized by Andries Nel, also part of the ANC. And then the interesting parts, I think, for me, begin when we start speaking about defense and military veterans. There we have Angie Motshekga, who comes from basic education, deputized by Richard Makungu, who's with the ANC, as well as the general, Bantu Holomisa. Now, the security cluster is incredibly important, of course, not only for the safety of the country, but we know that in the past, in the July unrest era, part of the lapses lied in this particular cluster. And I wonder if you reckon this is the team that is going to be able to prevent a repeat of that kind of crisis.
Well, there's a symbiotic relationship between security and development / the economy. For instance, I mean, who looks after the economy when we are sleeping? Is the security officers. So security is important in terms of intercepting threats internally and also externally. I think the ANC did not want to let go of those posts because they are strategic. I mean, we've seen, I'm not saying that will, in fact, I don't think that it will ever happen in this country. The coup d'etats, that we have seen on the African continent, I don't think that they will happen here because, in my opinion, because of the professionalization of SANDF. Because even when there was a void in the country, we didn't see the soldiers, trying to fill in that void. So the soldiers, they understand the conception of CMR, which is civil-military relations, that soldiers have to subject themselves to the rulership of civilians. So the ANC takes that cluster seriously of security. No wonder it has deployed its own cadres there. But I was just taken aback by the fact that, Bantu Holomisa or General Bantu Holomisa was not made a minister of any of those security portfolios because he is the major general, for crying out loud. He's got 2 stars. He understands the ins and outs of the defense. So even if he was not made the minister of defense, it could have been good if maybe he was deployed elsewhere because of his security background. So to make him a deputy, I think it's very unfortunate. I think he does deserve to be. I'm not taking away anything from the Minister of Defense. I think, she's got the relationship which is good with the president and the issues of trust there. But I think it's a good team, though.
All right. Yeah, there are a lot of nodding heads here in studio, so I suppose what you're saying is landing with some people. Professor Ntsikelelo Breakfast, as always, great getting your take on these issues. We appreciate your time. Professor Breakfast is a political analyst.